My dear friends, I would like to thank you all today for showing your support to the third edition of the International Peace Institute Middle East and North Africa's Ambassadorial Conference series. As most of you know, our ambassadorial series invite ambassadors and permanent diplomatic officials to discuss issues of priority to their countries, regions, and the international community. The aim is to share best practices, lessons learned, successful solutions, and varied perspectives on a range of pressing issues. In today's global village, the happenings of one country directly impact events across the world. This creates great potential to enhance collaboration within the diplomatic community by creating an inclusive platform for dialogue and cooperation on numerous issues. This subsequently can generate new and dynamic synergies linking the multilateral mechanisms and strategies together or to one another. With this in mind, today's theme is on the culture of peace and the Rohingya, topic more relevant now than before, considering the severe ramifications of the coronavirus pandemic across the globe. Since the UN General Assembly adopted Bangladesh's flagship resolution on the culture of peace in 1999, it remains one of the keys to achieving sustainable development. A culture of peace is about building positive foundations for mutual respect, prosperity, and broad-based inclusion, as well as putting an end to and dismantling violence. In a global environment that has been heightened rhetoric of hate and intolerance and acts of violence in recent years, the practice of the culture of peace is especially pertinent in program areas like the promotions of human rights, women and youth economic development, as well as regional integration. As such, the International Peace Institute, IPI, and Bangladesh share the same mission of promoting the culture of peace. Bangladesh remains a major proponent of the culture of peace through its initiatives and strategies for people-centric development towards sustainable development. Furthermore, Bangladesh has been directly impacted by one of the most severe refugee crises in these days. The Rohingya crisis is one of the most pressing human rights and security concerns for Bangladesh, the regional and international community alike, with more than 1 million Rohingyas being displaced since 2017. Bangladesh has opened its borders to Rohingya fleeing persecution and now hosts more than 1 million refugees. Figures I have indicate 1.2 million, which is not a simple matter to handle. More than 600,000 Rohingyas live in the largest refugee camp in the world, more than half of whom are women and girls, and 60% are children under 18. Bangladesh's large-scale humanitarian response goes beyond just matters of nationality, race, or religion, but one that is based on the culture of peace. As such, our ambassadorial series aim to share Bangladesh's challenges, lessons learned, and successes with the diplomatic community here based in Bahrain, and to discuss the ways in which the multilateral system represented by the UN system and its specialized agencies can work together towards achieving sustainable development, durable peace through a culture of peace strategy. With that in mind, I look forward to hearing the Bangladesh ambassador, my dear friend, His Excellency, Dr. Nazrul Islam. Dr. Nazrul Islam's presentation on the culture of peace is long awaited, and in which he will highlight his country's continuous efforts to work towards alleviating the sufferings of the Rohingya, and of course, in addition to the burdens carried by or suffered by his country's economy and development efforts. His Excellency's presentation will be followed by two discussants. First, ladies first, Dr. Nazneen Ahmed, Senior Research Fellow of Bangladesh Institute of Development Studies, BIDS. Second, His Excellency Dr. Marghoub Salim Butt, Executive Director of the Independent Permanent Human Rights Commission of the Organization of the Islamic Cooperation, OIC. They are already with us on screen. All after these presentations, we will open the floor for questions and comments. For our guests, please, and viewers who wish to ask questions or intervene, please either write your questions in the Zoom chat that you have in your screen, or if you wish to raise your digital hand, click on the icon labeled participants at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and then click on the button labeled raise hand, or simply raise your hand, and when the floor is open so that we can see you and you can ask your question. Thank you so much. Without further delay, I give the floor to my dear friend, His Excellency, Dr. Nazrul Islam, Bangladesh Ambassador to the Kingdom of Bahrain. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Najib. Good morning and assalamu alaikum, everyone. My distinguished colleagues, excellencies, ambassadors based in Bahrain, and two discussions, one from Bangladesh, Dr. Nazneen Ahmed, and another, Mr. Marghoub Salim Butt from Iphrc based in Jeddah. And all other participants, welcome to today's webinar organized by IPI. Let me first convey my deep appreciation to IPI MENA for organizing this ambassadorial series and giving me this opportunity to present culture of peace and Rohingya crisis issue in front of this August gathering. And I understand most of you, particularly ambassadors, they know about the issue. Since it is a time for Bangladesh to reflect this issue globally, and we are persistently continuing our appeal to international community to support Bangladesh to resolve the crisis. So today's topic, I find it is very important. And since Bangladesh has been actually continuously, as pointed out by Mr. Nejib, since 1999, during first term of office by current Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Her Excellency Sheikh Hasina, proposed this UNGA resolution, Culture on Peace, that's people-centric development. So in that context, actually, I relate with culture of peace and Rohingya crisis. So I'll be speaking first about this culture of peace resolution and also Bangladesh's recent development, achievements in socio-economic progress, women empowerment, and UN peacekeeping operations globally. And at the same time, how Bangladesh from 2016-17 onward, giving shelter to this most persecuted minority in the world, 1.1 million Rohingyas, they took shelter in Bangladesh. So how Bangladesh is tackling and dealing with this issue. So I would be, briefly talking about this issue, and then certainly to my colleagues' discussions, they will be speaking further on that. So may I request Dalia to, put up the screen. Okay, go to the next slide. At the beginning, I would like to pay tribute to our father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, who led the liberation war of Bangladesh in 1971. And this is his actually statement, what he made at the UN General Assembly in 1974. And there he talked about the peace should be based upon justice. So, and our foreign policy, go to the next slide. Actually, following the dictum of our founding father, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, that friendship to all and malice towards none. So that is being followed up by our current able daughter, current Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina. And last 12 years, she has been in government, and she has been pursuing, as we learned that 99, she proposed this culture of peace resolution. And again, when she formed government in 2009, since that year, 2009, every year, we are adopting this culture of peace at the UN General Assembly in New York. Please go to the next slide. So in these aspects, two important issues actually. Culture of peace, one is in the domestic front, how Bangladesh is achieving that in the domestic front, upholding the fundamental principles of our constitution and inclusive growth policy, economic policy, ensuring qualities, eliminating discriminations, empowering women, maintaining religious harmony. And Bangladesh has been actually acclaimed by international community is a role model for religious harmony. And we are living side by side, all religious Muslim, though it is Muslim majority country, but other religious faith, they can practice their religion freely. And also changing lives through development. As Mr. Najib pointed out, that IPS principle for economic development, regional integration, youth development. So Bangladesh is actually being in the very strategic location in the South Asia. We are actually doing that in inclusive growth led policies. Thank you. Next slide, please. And another aspects of maintaining peace is that in the international arena, and Bangladesh always actually upholding the principles of UN Charter, promoting the culture of peace globally, contributing, as I said, UN peacekeeping operation. And currently Bangladesh is the largest troops contributing country in the world under UN peacekeeping operation. And also we are behaving responsibly with our neighbors, and being actually in South Asia, our great neighbor is Republic of India, and another neighbor I'll be talking about Myanmar, and also next door neighbor is China. So all these actually neighboring countries, we have very excellent relations, and we are maintaining that. Thank you. Next slide. So I come to this point because of this UN architecture, peace and security, and that's why Bangladesh felt that it is important to have that culture of peace resolution. And that declaration and program of action on the culture of peace, as I said, it has been taken up at the UNGA every year, and even last year it was adopted with the support co-sponsorship of 110 countries, including Kingdom of Bahrain, where we are sitting, and many of the countries whose ambassadors you are taking part. Please, next slide. And you can see that later on, Bangladesh actually actively participated in UN Peacebuilding Commission. And in 2012, Bangladesh was chair of that commission. And every year, actually, in the New York, at the sidelines of UNGA, Bangladesh organize, high-level forum on culture of peace, and where actually we can assess and find out the necessary inputs for global peacemaking and peace building. Next slide, please. And as I said, actually, we are currently in the month of March. Few days later, 26th of March will be Bangladesh's golden jubilee of independence. 1971, we got independence, and this is a very significant year in the context of Bangladesh's liberation. And we are celebrating on the eve of celebration of our 50th anniversary of independence. And also at the same time, we are celebrating from last year till this year, birth centenary of our father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Please, next slide. And these are actually some indicators of Bangladesh's economic progress. And these are actually some indicative data I put in front of you, that Bangladesh is now 43rd largest economy and the second largest ready-made garment exporters, second largest jute exporters. And Bangladesh recently, last year actually, launched a satellite in the orbit. And also some other economic indicators, agriculture, remittance, many things. And recently, perhaps Nobel laureate Professor Amartya Sen, he spoke about Bangladesh's socio-economic development. And it is, in many ways, better than among South Asian countries, and fastest growing economy in the Asia. And even during this COVID, perhaps you know that Bangladesh's economy in 2009, it was progressing well, but due to COVID, it reduced. But even though our prediction was 3% plus, but actually it happened 5 plus growth rate. Next slide, please. And these are the national policies of making it inclusive. Government has aggressively in last 1 decade taken social safety nets for all vulnerable people of the Bangladesh, and that's why the poverty reduction has been almost 50%. It was earlier about 40%, now it is 20%. So last 10, 12 years, significant improvement in the poverty reduction in Bangladesh because of these social policies of the government of Bangladesh. Next, please. And please go next. And come to the women empowerment. And these are the policies actually government of Bangladesh enacted National Women Development Policy in 2011. And subsequently domestic workers protection and welfare policy in 2015, and national action plan to prevent violence against women and children. And Bangladesh is signatory to CEDAW and UN Security Council resolution on women, peace and security. Bangladesh is also supporting that resolution. So in gender gap, index, Bangladesh also recently done very pretty well. It is around now out of 160 countries, 50th position in recent years. Next, please. So go please next. So these are actually different policies enacted, ensuring quota participation in the parliament, in politics, in socio-economic life, and also significant number of women workers. And Bangladesh government is aiming for 40% participation of women in every sector by 2021 this year. And we are targeting to achieve this 50% benchmark in 2030 by sustainable development goals. That year we want to achieve more progress in women empowerment in Bangladesh. Please next slide. And these are actually as I said, sustainable developments, these 17 targets, goals actually we are trying to achieve. Last time in MDGs achievement, government of Bangladesh did very well, and we are hoping that SDGs achievements will be doing good also this year. And recently, as you know, that UN Committee for Development policy, they have approved Bangladesh to graduate from LDC to developing country in late February. And we are hoping that by, because of COVID, it has been extended. It was earlier 2024, but 2026, Bangladesh will be out of LDC list. And by 2030, as I said, we want to achieve these SDGs. And also by 2041, Bangladesh would like to become a developed country. And at the same time, Bangladesh has a very significant blue economy. And in that context, Bangladesh has adopted a Delta plan for 2100 Delta plan. So in that perspective, Bangladesh is achieving significant development in all areas. Thank you. Next slide, please. And apart from this, under the culture of peace, whatever development progress we are achieving, we have challenges also. And out of many challenges, two significant challenges Bangladesh is now facing. One is climate change, another is Rohingya crisis. And climate change, I'll not be talking about this issue today because time is short. And you know that Bangladesh is also playing role model in the context of handling climate-related issues. And Bangladesh is very active in that forum. Climate Vulnerable Forum chair is now Bangladesh. And also Adaptation Center has been launched last year in Bangladesh. So today I would like to talk about Rohingya issues. Go to the next slide, please. And as we know that Rohingya issues crisis is not new. Actually, it has been there for late 70s. There was an influx, and we successfully negotiated with the government of Myanmar then, and they took back almost all of them. But again, 2016, 17, this influx again happened. And this time, more than 800,000, they fled northern Rakhine and took shelter in Bangladesh. And as I said, our Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, as she has been rightly, declared by international community Mother of Humanity, she gave shelter these persecuted people, and they are in Bangladesh. So this is the crisis began in 2017 onward, and we are still dealing with that. Please, next slide. And actually, it has been internationally recorded what happened, and this critical factor actually happened in 1982 when the government of Myanmar, they enacted a citizenship law, and they put the Rohingya people out of that law, and they became almost actually, though their ancestral home, it is their forefathers, they lived there for centuries. Even many Rohingyas, they were cabinet members in the government of Myanmar, but they were out of that law purview. So these are the most persecuted minority in the world. Next slide, please. And UN Human Rights Council, they have said ethnic cleansing, and this is a massive atrocity crimes, and also a fact-finding mission led by UN Human Rights Council. They found that it is a genocidal intent. They happened in 2017. Next slide, please. And as I said, Bangladesh Prime Minister, she gave shelter of these people, 1.1 million. Still they are there. Plus, next slide, please. And she has been given this award in 2018 after that influx. Next slide, please. And I talk about actually today I'll not be talking much about impact of protracted this Rohingya crisis, but certainly as Mr. Najib also pointed out that this is a very impact for Bangladesh on economy, its environment, socio-political stability, and security concern for Bangladesh. Next slide, please. So bilaterally, actually, we are trying to resolve this crisis. And as I said, Myanmar is our next door neighbor. And we have been actually dealing with this Myanmar for many years very well. And after this incident, actually, there has been 3 bilateral instruments signed, 2 in 2017 and one in January 2018. And still, and also with UNHCR, Bangladesh also signed MOU. And we are hoping that these people will be, taken back in a conducive, giving them right atmosphere for living there in their ancestral home in northern Rakhine State. Next slide, please. And as you know, in the region, as I said, China is also important player and also P5 member. So we feel that this trilateral approach, Bangladesh, China, and Myanmar, if we can work together, then there might be a possibility of, repatriation of these Rohingya people soon. And recently in January, there has been a meeting in the foreign secretary level. So since then, there has not been much progress, but we are hoping that it will be done in near future. Next slide, please. And these are the actually multilateral approach in UN General Assembly, Human Rights Council we are pursuing. Go to the next slide because time is short, I understand. So I'll be skipping these slides and go to a few more slides. So multilateral aspects we are pursuing at General Assembly and also Human Rights Council. Currently, Bangladesh is a member of Human Rights Council, and there we are pursuing to convince the international community to put pressure on government of Myanmar to take them back. And next slide, please. But it has been more than 3 years. Regrettably, not a single Rohingya could be repatriated. Come to the next slide. And in this context, this Vashanchor, why I am talking about this issue, government of Bangladesh felt because of those who visited Rohingya camps in Cox's Bazar, Teknaf, they know that it is a crowded camp and there is a shortage of space over there. That's why government of Bangladesh built these facilities, and it is not for permanent facilities but for temporary shelter, giving them very good conducive environment so that they can live there peacefully. And government of Bangladesh is not forcing them to relocate them on the basis of voluntarily. They are taken over there in Vashanchor, and more than 14,000 relocated, and we are hoping that 100,000 will be relocated there. But again, this is a temporary measure. We would like to see the government of Myanmar take their citizens back to their motherland. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, next slide. And so I come to this point actually consistently. Our Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina at UN General Assembly every year telling this important aspect that Myanmar must manifest clear political will to support this sustainable return and reintegration of Rohingyas to Myanmar, and they should abolish discriminatory laws, and Myanmar must create a conducive environment by building and granting protection rights and pathway to citizenship of Rohingyas. And next slide, please. And these are the fundamental points actually our Honorable Prime Minister has been telling international community. And Kofi Annan Commission report, we know that 2017 August, Kofi Annan Commission, they submitted a report. They submitted 88 recommendations, and it has been actually very good report, and we also support that commission report. And government of Bangladesh is saying that it should be implemented in entirety. Next slide, please. Next. And we know that OIC, actually Organization of Islamic Cooperation, in Makkah summit, they authorized the leaders for taking these Rohingya issues to International Court of Justice. And on behalf of OIC, Gambia, they filed a case in November 2019. And after that lodgement of the case under that 1948 Genocide Convention, and ICJ asked Myanmar to take certain specific steps to protect Rohingya from further atrocities and also to preserve the evidences of previous abuses. So the first memorial, again, Gambia submitted in last year, 23rd October. So that will take time, International Court of Justice, but we appeal international community to take this issue seriously and support the government of Bangladesh for their endeavor to safe, orderly, and sustained repatriation of Rohingya minority from Bangladesh to Myanmar. And at the same time, International Criminal Court, they have launched an investigation. So that will take time. Next slide, please. So this is our actually point. Rohingyas, they are Myanmar nationals, and therefore they must return to their homeland. And we appeal to international community to have meaningful engagement with Myanmar. And I am hopeful that those who are present here, that Excellencies, ambassadors of, I can see P5 member, also our British ambassador, and also French ambassador is here. I don't see, perhaps Chinese ambassador is not there, but Indian ambassador, our next neighbor, next door neighbor, and they have also very significant, influence over Myanmar, and we hope that all international community, they will support us. And we know that what is happening in Myanmar, I'll not be talking about that issue, but we hope that peace and stability will remain in Myanmar, and constitutional and democratic process will be upheld in Myanmar, so that Bangladesh can deal with the government of Myanmar for safe and orderly repatriation of this persecuted Rohingya community. Thank you all for listening me. And if you have any questions, I'll be replying at the question answer session. And now I give the floor back to Mr. Najib for conducting the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Actually, it's very, very touching, very sometimes saddening, but to see this large number of humans subjected to such ordeals. But at the same time, we'd like to, on behalf of IPI and our audience, to express our gratitude to the people and the government of Bangladesh for taking all these efforts, wishing that they will succeed in preserving the rights of these humans in these difficult conditions until hopefully a permanent solution is found. And as you mentioned, the permanent solution is their return to their land to live within their country, peaceful as any other group, ethnic group or other. Thank you very much. And I will remind my dear friends in the audience, if you wish to ask questions or intervene, please either write your question in the Zoom chat or raise your hand with digital hand. Click on the icon labeled participants at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and then click on the button labeled raise hand, or simply raise your hand. And Dalia and Eliza, my colleagues from IPI, will alert me on that so we can see you and help you put your question. I'd like to thank you again, Mr. Ambassador, and then welcome our first discussant, a woman from Bangladesh, and glad that Bangladesh, this large country, is led by Sheikha Hasina, another woman with who's a visionary, who's been labeled at the top level of the humanitarian initiatives. So Dr. Nazneen Ahmed, a senior research fellow, Bangladesh Institute of Development Studies, BIDS. She is also playing a key role on women empowerment in Bangladesh. So, Madam, you have the floor, and thank you for joining us from Dhaka.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon from Dhaka. And I'd like to thank IPI MENA for inviting me as a panelist in this ambassadorial conference, which is titled as Culture of Peace and the Forcibly Displaced Rohingya People. And before I start my comment, I'd also like to thank His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Nazrul Islam for a wonderful presentation, and also thanks for contacting me to be a panelist to talk on your wonderfully presented facts and figures. I would not repeat those things. By profession and by, I'm an economist, so my intervention, my way of looking at this, the topic of today's seminar will be mostly from economic and development perspective, and partially from a long-term perspective, I would like to say. As has been mentioned by Dr. Nazrul Islam, that how Bangladesh has been progressing well in every aspect, and you'd be happy to know that in the last decade, on an average, Bangladesh grew every year at an average rate of more than 7%. This is wonderful in terms of world's context, only accepting this COVID year, when of course the whole world is facing the crisis. We have been growing at a very fast rate, and the growth was inclusive, and I would like to say that growth was mostly, it's also looking at both urban and rural people. Of course, we have some problems with inequality. The rich people are growing very fast, more than the poor people, but we see a drastic reduction in the poverty rate. So that has been a very good achievement by Bangladesh. And if you have noticed a recent last week's New York Times article by Nicholas Kristof, where he is asking that Joe Biden's rule, their policy should actually now look at Bangladesh as an example of how we could eradicate or reduce poverty by investing in children, by investing in education, especially for education for women. Those are some flagship investment that Bangladesh made. And also the ready-made garment sector, the main export sector of Bangladesh, that is also dominated by women employees, women workers. And currently, 62% of the workers are women, though previously the participation was women was even in proportion high in the ready-made garment sector. So if we look at this development picture and then we think of this culture of peace, what we are trying to do in Bangladesh, if I look at what I found in various studies I conducted in recent times, especially on the development context, especially on social safety net programs that Bangladesh has undertaken. I did some studies, and those have a vast range of operations in terms of helping the destitutes, in terms of helping the elderly, in terms of helping the widows, children. So in recent times, we have taken very good policies in last 10 years. One very important policy that is relevant for culture of peace is the policies for the poor, for national social safety net policy, and that has been made very practical. The previous policy had options for losses, but now the policy is such that we are utilizing digital technology so that the allocation government makes that directly goes to the poor people. So I think this is just one example. So when we are trying to create employment for people, because Bangladesh is a country where we have also domination of youth population. 1/3 of our 2/3 of our population is actually youth. So this is a time for long-term development goal of Bangladesh, that we push Bangladesh's development ahead. So at this time, we don't really want any loss in terms of economic development's perspective, because we have the roadmap of becoming a developed country in 2041. So we have this demographic dividend. We have this huge youth population who are looking for employment, and the government, the private sector is trying hard to create development of all youths who are entering the labor market every year. Every year, we see that there are the huge number of people are entering in the labor market, like 2 million people, but we cannot create job for all of them. At that time, when we look at the Rohingya crisis, if you see it from the long-term perspective, from the economic perspective of what is happening in the Cox's Bazar area where these Rohingyas are, where they are staying, at that place, in our research in BIDS, we have found that the cost of living in that whole area has grown up. Because and also we have seen that there is a downturn in the wage rate in that area. There is a problem with the employment of in the informal sector. So in one sense, we are trying to help the people, the Rohingyas, and giving them shelter, food, and everything, but there are some costs for that. This is actually a kind of putting pressure on the poverty, on the poor people who were the Bangladeshi poor people in that region. So when we are thinking of enhancing peace for some group of people, maybe in some way there are other people who are facing challenges, who are facing the problem of high price of daily needs in that area, lower wage rate, lower employment opportunities. So as the Honorable Ambassador has already mentioned, that government is trying to relocate those who wish to be relocated to a region, to an island called Bhasanchar. But as you have seen from his presentation, the maximum capacity is 100,000 people, but there is 1 million Rohingyas there. So even if all of them want to move there, we cannot take them there. So from the long-term perspective, even when we are moving them to Bhasanchar, what will happen next? I mean, the community will grow. That is the natural phenomena. We want all human being on this world to have a good life. But at the same time, Bangladesh, when we are trying to utilize every single resource we have so that we can ensure a better life for our people, then this is a big challenge for us. Still, out of 160 million people, 20% is still live under poverty line. So that means it's already, we have a huge number of poor population, and government is trying hard to take different policies, different training programs, employment generation programs, social safety net programs to help give a better life to them. And government's inclusive growth policy has some things in its core, that is giving good health to people, opportunity of good health to all people, opportunity to have good education and training to all people, and to give them access to markets. So improving the connectivity, improving road, rail, and other transports, improving even connectivity with the neighboring countries. So when we are moving ahead with our policies, with a better peace and prosperity for the citizens who are kind of lagging behind the main development path, at that time this Rohingya crisis is actually putting challenges on the peace and prosperity we have inside the country. So I think the international community, because today I see a very august gathering, and I would like to appeal that from an economist's point of view, I see in the long run, if we cannot solve this problem, this may slow down the prosperity growth path of Bangladesh. So there, I think we really need to think, because we cannot improve some people's peace and prosperity at the cost of some others, then at the end, as we see, if we look at the whole, then it doesn't improve the quality of life for all people. So I think I will not speak more than this. I would like to say, just as Honorable Ambassador mentioned, that the international community should come forward so that Bangladesh can move ahead to bring those 20% people of our population who are still poor, to bring them out of poverty that we wish to do, and to bring better life for them. And at the same time, and for that we need to solve this Rohingya crisis, because I think if we don't solve it now, in future we may actually threaten the possibility of achieving SDGs, achieving the poverty reduction goal, where we are working wonderfully, we are doing wonderful. Of course we have problems, but I think overall we are, on an average, we are growing very fast. And in that sense, I would urge the international community and urge all the August gathering of people here to come forward to solve this Rohingya problem, and to Myanmar should take immediate action for to sustainable return of the Rohingyas and reintegration of Rohingyas there. I think there lies the world peace. I work on a few words about the women empowerment, and also I think because of this Rohingya crisis, also I think when we look at the women there who are not really at living a very the life they are living, you can't believe if you don't see it. If I look at the women there, they're also facing lots of violence, lots of, though they're trying, because they are in a very congested area, the law enforcement authority and others are trying hard, but it's a huge people in one area, so there are violence and others, and they're not getting proper education. So I'm really, if I look at the whole picture, I think we need to act very fast to solve this problem. And where in Bangladesh, we always take pride that we can speak properly. I mean, if I consider myself as a woman, when I work in Bangladesh, when I work for people, I go to the field and everywhere, I see the possibilities. I see the possibilities in people. I see the potentials among women. But if we have limited resources, limited area, we have our own problems. We need to solve them. So please help Bangladesh to grow. We are growing very well, and help face this challenge. And I want your cooperation there. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nazneen. You have brought in the wise voice of women to this appeal, very important and I would say serious appeal. And I am sure that all these members of this August audience, as you labeled it, will heed to that appeal. At least they will convey it to their capitals, to their communities. And we do wish that this challenge will open new opportunities for cooperation between your country and and of course, first and foremost, Myanmar, to return to normal relations while absorbing back the Rohingya community. And then, of course, with all other neighbors that you have and His Excellency mentioned, in order to turn this challenge, as I said, into an opportunity for a much better future. Now, I would like to have the perspective of the Islamic Organization of Islamic Cooperation, represented here by Mr. Marghoub Salim Bat, who is going to take the floor now to, of course, enlighten us on from the perspective also of the Independent Permanent Human Rights Commission, Iphrc, of the OIC. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Najib, Friji. Um, Honorable Chair, my distinguished colleagues, dear friend, Mr. Nazrul Islam, and the respected participants. On behalf of the OIC Independent Permanent Human Rights Commission, I'm indeed very pleased to participate in this important event that is discussing one of the most burning human rights issues of our time, which is the crisis of Rohingya refugees and how it can be addressed through a culture of peace. Dr. Nejib was mentioning that I would, be speaking from the perspective of the IPHRC or the OIC. Well, that is the easiest way of just stating what we have done and what we have been doing over a period of last decade. That is all well documented. It is available on our websites and many other things. And I would be happy to answer any of the questions that the distinguished participants may have on a specific point. But I was more happy to see that IPI and Bangladesh has joined hand to look into this whole issue from a different perspective also, to look at it or address it from a culture of peace perspective. So in my statement or my discussion in the next few minutes, I also wanted to dwell on this particular aspect. So, but at the same time, I remain at your disposal for any questions or particular query you may have on the role of the IPHRC that we have played in the last few years since our inception, because this has been one of the priority themes in our work and activities. We have undertaken fact-finding visits. We have been regularly approaching the Human Rights Council, the General Assembly, the Myanmar authorities. So we have done everything that we could in our perspective, including pushing the OIC to take the case to ICJ, and within the OIC, the ad hoc committee, which was created to pursue this whole matter in the ICJ, we provided them with all the legal evidence, the human right abuses committed in Myanmar against Rohingya. So that is another side of the story. But today I wanted to focus on this issue of culture of peace. Ladies and gentlemen, this, as we all know, the culture of peace is a very valuable concept which was brought and introduced by Bangladesh in the UN system and welcomed by all member states. It actually rightly highlights that the culture of global peace is not merely an absence of war, but a set of values that include tolerance, sustainable development, democratic participation, and respect for all human rights, as well as tackling any issue from its root causes through dialogue and negotiation. But more importantly, it's a transition of individual behaviors and institutional policies to embrace the values of peace, democracy, and human rights. Undoubtedly, these values cannot be achieved overnight. Societies and countries have to work for it for a longer time in a sustained fashion, starting from overhauling their education systems, training all government functionaries, and aligning their policies with the universal human rights framework. In the context of today's discussion, when we analyze the ongoing conflict, we find a number of reasons that led to some of the most egregious human rights violations, including the forcible displacement of Rohingyas from their homeland. A community that has lived in the same country for centuries has been made alien and otherized in their own homeland. A number of reasons, of course, can be cited that have led to this sordid state of affair. And while we can argue that the military junta or the Myanmar junta needed a boogeyman to divert attention of their people from their own wrongdoings, or wanted to settle score with Muslims who were perceived to be siding with Britishers during their colonial conquests of Burma, the fact remains that an organized and well orchestrated campaign was launched that led to stereotyping of Rohingyas as the most despicable community that was raping Buddhist women, forcibly converting them to Islam, overproducing children to tilt the demographic balance, as well as monopolizing certain businesses and sectors at the cost of other communities. This indeed was the absurd stereotyping that led to a generalized hatred of Rohingya among the Myanmar society and institutionalized discrimination to an extent that today they are denied even their fundamental human right of being a citizens of their own country, purely due to their distinct ethnicity and religion. As today we are also discussing this whole concept from a perspective of a culture of peace, I believe that we need to address the core issue of this institutionalized discrimination and stereotyping in the Myanmar society. It is all the more important that we have seen that unfortunately this stereotyping is spreading in the broader region, in many of the other countries in the neighboring region. And that is why it is all the more important to be addressed through a culture of peace, through a broader dialogue among all affected countries, regions, and societies. To this end, we recommend using some of the key points that were mentioned in the declaration and program of action on the culture of peace, especially the last 2 or 3 points that are very pertinent to this whole concept, that talks about respecting all human rights, advancing understanding, tolerance and solidarity, and above all supporting a participatory communication process. Such an approach is a must to address the apprehensions among different communities and religions in the broader Myanmar society, but also in the broader region. It would also help to reconcile with the past and present issues. And in order to advance this particular approach, we need to move in a step-by-step manner. Understandably, it would be difficult to approach and involve the presently politicized Buddhist leadership in Myanmar. However, we can engage the Buddhist leadership in the region and start a meaningful dialogue that would certainly have an impact on the views and understanding of the broader Buddhist population of the whole region. Remove the misperception among the followers of Buddhist or other communities about Islam and Muslim, and thereby paving the way for a better coexistence either in Myanmar or in the broader region. Similarly, we need to involve the broader civil society in Myanmar as well as the political and democratic leadership of Myanmar into a dialogue process, whereby they need to look into their policies purely from a human rights perspective that promotes tolerance, mutual understanding, and peaceful coexistence among all communities, ethnicities, and religions. This is particularly a good time to talk to these democratic forces in Myanmar, who are themselves at present facing organized discrimination in the form of a direct attack on the Myanmar democracy. I would like to highlight here is that in the recent special session of the Human Rights Council in early February 2021, when they addressed the issue of the military coup in Myanmar, and they talked about restoration of democracy, they also highlighted a very important point in which the Human Rights Council stressed that there's a need to address the root cause of the human rights situation in Rakhine State and create the necessary conditions for the safe, sustainable, and dignified return of Rohingya refugees. And that return, which we call about safe, dignified, sustainable, and voluntary, cannot happen without addressing the root causes. Whatever we may do, even if we force some kind of a return, that return will not be sustainable. That's where we talk about addressing the root causes. Just to mention that this is something that both the IPHRC and OIC has been stressing for long. The OIC Secretary General has called for an enhanced interfaith and intercultural dialogue for removing misperceptions as well as to address all grievances and concerns in a peaceful manner. Similarly, in its approach to addressing the crisis in OIC, OIC has always taken a very neutral and unbiased approach. Just to give you one example, even during the heat of crisis, when OIC was offering all-out support and humanitarian assistance to Myanmar, we never conditionalize this humanitarian assistance or support for Muslims only. We were always offering that this humanitarian assistance is for the complete Rakhine state, and it should be distributed without any bias to all affected, ethnicities, religion, and communities, including when we offered to offered two hospitals. We offered that the hospital, one of the hospital may be established in the Muslim or the Rohingya Muslim area, whereas the other hospital should be established in the other area where the other Buddhists or other ethnicities were located. Unfortunately, none of our these moves were welcomed or they paid heed, although they have been trying to engage us in different manners, but there were no concrete results on the ground. Well, accordingly, I don't want to dwell more on that particular aspect, but this is exactly what I wanted to bring home from the perspective of an international organization, that we need to follow this approach of culture of peace. And one thing I would just like to highlight, including IPI can work on it. There's a very good organization, this King Abdullah International Center for Interfaith and Intercultural Dialogue, which is located in Vienna. I think if we can hold some kind of a broader dialogue involving IPI, CAICID, IPHRC, and OIC, together with the different religious groups in the region of Southeast Asia and South Asia, we can start, or we can take the first step, which can lead towards addressing these root causes and towards some kind of a meaningful reconciliation. So this was just from my side that I wanted to highlight. IPHRC would always be ready to take part in any of such initiative. And with this, I come to the end of this small short intervention, but I stay at your disposal for addressing any of the queries or questions that you may have on the broader role of OIC, IPHRC, of the human right of the Rohingya refugee. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency Marhoob Salim Bat, for this insightful presentation and the focus on human rights, which is a key element to sustainable development and to, of course, solving all similar crises. And I'm glad that you mentioned the partnership that you have established between the High Commissioner for Human Rights and the IPHRC and, of course, OIC. Understand that this will, of course, add the right dimension to the final solution, hopefully soon, of this Rohingya problem. And your appeal to have IPI and IPHRC and the CAICID Center in Vienna, for your information, was established with a big assistance hand of IPI during the rule of the late King Abdullah, who, of course, as you know, CAICID was established after his initiative after 9/11. And of course, your appeal will be registered seriously, and we'll get back to you, to my friends in Vienna, with whom we have been working closely in order to put some fine-tune the ideas that you have just referred to, in order to move forward with the human rights dimension of this crisis. With this, we come now to the real speakers, because we have put some ideas there, which is the Q&A segment. I will ask my friends, the ambassadors and the journalists, and whoever is interested to put a question, not to hesitate. Dalia, do you have any questions so far?
Yes, from Mr. Munir Bushnaki.
Munir, could you put your question, or his, shall I prefer people to hear Mr. Munir.
Excellency, the German ambassador just raised his hand. Maybe we'll wait for Munir to get back to.
We'll wait for Munir to get back. The German ambassador, you have the floor. Unmute.
Yes, thank you very much. I wanted to thank very much the IPI and Ambassador Nazrul Islam and the speakers, Dr. Nazim Ahmed and His Excellency Margot Butt, for the very important and very profound presentations we heard today. And I think it is remarkable that Bangladesh, not only on a conceptual level with the resolution for the culture of peace, but also with a very practical contribution in a very important crisis, is working for the culture of peace. Because by accommodating more than 1 million forcibly displaced people, your country has really made a major contribution to peace and stability in the region. And I wanted foremost also on behalf of Germany to thank the government of Bangladesh for agreeing to the much needed mission of the UN to Bhashan Char. And we recognize that providing shelter to so many refugees is an enormous humanitarian challenge. So Germany will continue supporting Bangladesh with the situation. And I just wanted to highlight also, which has been mentioned, the importance of a perspective of return for the displaced Rohingya, because Germany is committed to this perspective, and it is crucial to ensure that a potential return, as has been mentioned, is voluntary, dignified and safe. And the coup d'etat in Myanmar was a setback in this regard, but we remain committed to this process, and Germany advocates for a stronger role. What could be, and this would be my question also to the participants, the role of the United Nations in this repatriation process. Which role could the United Nations play to enable the perspective of a voluntary, dignified and safe return?
Thank you. I think, thank you, Ambassador Buchman, my friend Kay. Very important encouragement to Bangladesh and all other players in this regard. I think I'll give the floor to His Excellency Nazrul Islam to answer part of this question. And if Madam Dr. Nazreen and my friend Marhoub would like to take the floor on that regard, please do. Next to be on my list of questions will be the US envoy, CDA Margaret Nardi.
Thank you, German Ambassador, Mr. Kai, for your comments. We do appreciate support of Government of Germany for consistent support to Government of Bangladesh for return of these displaced Rohingyas to Myanmar. And as you posed that question, yes, we understand that UN should play a greater role for sustainable, dignified, and safe return of these Rohingyas. And that's why actually we signed MOU with UNHCR for facilitating that. Not only with UNHCR, we requested UNDP also to engage with government of Myanmar for creating some development aspects, living conditions improvement over there in Rakhine State, so that when these people will be returning, they can have good jobs, decent living over there. So certainly that's why we are actually at the UN Human Rights Council persistently. We are calling through that channel, and also General Assembly. We are not member of UN Security Council, but again we are pursuing with UN Security Council, particularly P5 member, to put pressure on Myanmar so that they take them back. So all these channels through UN, actually we are continuously following it up, and certainly UN has a greater role to support this cause. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any follow-up to this question from the German ambassador, or shall we move to the next question? And whenever
I would just like to add one thing that already to face the crisis, different UN agencies are supporting Bangladesh, which is very welcomed to face the crisis. But one thing I just maybe I can I would like to add that many people think that supporting in terms of finance is enough to face it. I mean, but it's not that. We all understand that in the long term, it's not sustainable, only supporting because it's such a small country, Bangladesh. So I think in addition to what UN is doing inside, and as our honorable ambassador just mentioned, I think also we can use other channels, like there are different regional trade agreements between countries in this region, like BIMSTEC and others. We can also utilize those avenues there, and those regional integration agreements, and that needs to have more frequent interaction. There is the question of connectivity, where many agencies have a role to play. This whole connectivity issues with Bangladesh, India, Nepal, Myanmar, China. So when in those forum, I think also this issue need to be discussed, because all these countries have some common interest there where they can gain from trade and other relationship. Thank you.
yes, Mr. Marghoub, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Doctor. I wanted to just say one particular point on this very important issue, because the role of UN was mentioned by the Honorable Ambassador of Germany. We all understand that Bangladesh is not the only country which is hosting refugees. And they are not the only refugees in the world who have to be taken care by the international community. Similarly, the coffers of donor community in the world is, limited. Whatever we have to be honest with each other. So this is the fact that we have to understand. And there are many other countries who are hosting refugees, and the donor community also have their own limit. With the kind of crisis that we had of this pandemic COVID-19, these resources have further depleted. And we are going to face severe problems. All countries who are hosting refugees like Bangladesh would face severe problem in the humanitarian assistance coming to them. So what is the alternative? In my humble view, the best alternative would be that we take concrete action, as Nazrul Islam was mentioning, that through some kind of forced, measures imposed on those countries who have, from where these refugees are coming, to take those refugees back where they can, especially in the case of Myanmar. So, and that can be imposed only through concrete action from the imposing mechanism that we have within the UN, that is the Security Council. And it has to be a timed or phased program that should be imposed through, relevant quarters, and they should be, made responsible to fulfill those obligations of taking those refugees back in a sustainable manner by creating the conducive conditions in their own country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I haven't seen Munir Bushnaqi back to this thing, but instead of putting his question, I'll still wait for him and give the floor to Margaret Nardi, the CDA of the US Embassy. Margaret, you have the floor.
Thank you, Nejib. Assalamu alaikum. And I'm going to thank Ambassador Islam, Dr. Nazneen, and His Excellency Marghoub for the very insightful comments about the desperate situation in Bangladesh dealing with 1.2 million refugees. I want to congratulate you on the celebration of 50 years of independence and all of the very impressive gains that the country has made, and wish you the very best in achieving the goals in 2041. We look forward to celebrating that with you. We have sort of set aside the February 1st coup in Burma as if it's a separate issue. But I guess what I would say, if you look at what has been said here about 1.2 million Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh, and no movement on returning even a single one in the past 3 years, which was before the most recent coup. The fact that this coup has taken place yesterday, there was the greatest number of deaths, amount of violence that they've seen so far. Not only will continued violence there and the coup make it difficult to return the 1.2 million Rohingya that are in Bangladesh, it could create additional refugees coming onto your doorstep, as well as poor treatment of the Rohingya that remain in the country of Burma because of their minority status. So I say that only because I think these things are connected. I think the situation there is very concerning. You may know that the United States on February 10th we imposed sanctions on former and current military officials. We imposed export controls on some of the businesses that are owned by the military, and we are looking for ways to prevent military access to over $1 billion in Burmese government funds that is currently within the United States. So we are continuing to try to do what we can to put pressure on the military leaders there to allow for the resumption of the democratic process, and certainly to cease violence now. I do think it will have a big impact on the situation of the Rohingya in Bangladesh. And so I know that the international community is making its voice heard, and I would encourage a continuation of that. And certainly there will be continued US support for the return of the Rohingya, and pressure not to increase the number of refugees that are on your doorstep. So this is a very important topic. I thank you very much. Thanks, Nejib, and thank you to Ambassador Islam for taking the time to share this with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret, and we appreciate your support and your country's support to both the democratic process in Myanmar and, of course, our today's subject, the ordeal of the Rohingya refugees. And I think we count on your role both as the ambassador of the US and also as my speakers noted earlier, as a member of the permanent one of the permanent members of the Security Council. And here, I'm glad also to have a non-member of the Security Council, which is Tunisia, my country, represented by a woman here, to also reflect that idea of these appeals to your capitals. And this will, of course, contribute. And I don't think we will spare any effort. Thank you again, Margaret. And we're glad to have you around. I will leave it to Mr. Ambassador if he wants to comment on Margaret's notes.
No, thank you. Certainly, Margaret, she rightly pointed out that yes, we do actually, consider a very important player in the UN Security Council, US government. And we are getting their support, and in future, as she pointed out, that in 4th of February we have seen that UN Security Council, they released a press statement, and there they also mentioned, just I read from there, that Security Council reiterated the need to address the root causes of the crisis in Rakhine State. To create conditions necessary for the safe, voluntary, sustainable, and dignified return of the displaced, persons. So they recognized the important issue given this situation, as I said, in Myanmar, and as a neighbor, we hope that democratic and constitutional principle will be restored there. And we would like to deal with the government of Myanmar for their early return. And that's why we count on support of international community, including great country like United States. And we are very happy to see the support from US government. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And let me put a question that was sent to us by my friend Munir Bushnaqi. Munir Bushnaqi is a former DGA, Deputy Director General, Assistant Director General of UNESCO, and he is one of the world leaders in terms of world heritage preservation, world heritage during war and all that, armed conflicts. And he's also the advisor to Sheikh Hamay here regarding the Arab Regional Office for World Heritage. His question is, are there studies besides economy about the impact of the loss in terms of cultural heritage, loss intangible and intangible heritage? This is addressed to, I guess, Mr. Ambassador and Dr. Nazneen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Munir, for posing this question. Actually, there has been some fact-finding mission and study from UN. They tried, but unfortunately, the government of Myanmar, they did not extend much support. But still, that heritage, tangible, intangible heritage assessment, what has been destroyed over there in Rakhine. I understand, to my understanding, the full-fledged report is yet to be done. So certainly, since he asked on the point of cultural heritage aspect, I feel that it is also an important element for that generation, because otherwise it will be lost. So from international community's perspective, I feel that UNESCO and others, they should come forward with certain projects to assess that and also take necessary steps to preserve those heritages. Thank you.
Yeah, I think
so much.
the ambassador has addressed them, so I don't have anything to say. Thank you.
Very good, excellent. Now, Your Excellency, you mentioned the Bhasan Char Island, which is, as you said, has been at the center of some concerns regarding handling that situation. And I would like you, as an open country and open ambassador, to try to respond to those human rights concerns there. I know that the situation is very complicated. I know that it's a heavy duty for Bangladesh, and I'm sure all the good intentions are there. We all appreciate the opened, not only borders, houses, but also hearts of Bangladeshi. But of course, during all similar crises where host countries receive this huge amount of number of refugees, there are some issues there. So could you please reassure us and give us your insight and your government's insight in that regard? Thank you.
Thank you. I briefly touched upon that. Actually, government of Bangladesh created that facilities after necessary, environmental assessment of that, land, and it has been for many years. And so cyclone and other calamities, yes, it occurs in Bangladesh, but there is enough protection measures done over there under the supervision of Bangladesh Navy. And we created that facilities, as I said, for temporary, and how it is running, we invited resident ambassadors to visit there, and I understand recently they undertook visit over there. And from UN, perhaps they are yet to undertake that visit. And Bangladesh is open country, and we welcome everybody to see that facilities. And as we understand, enough measures has been put in place for their safety and security. And government is aware of some natural tides and other things. But as I said, necessary prior investigation was done, and conducive environment has been created. And even though afterwards, if anybody wants to see, we are open to that. And as I said, and also that is not permanent residence. Actually, it is a temporary kind of facilities. And I point to you here that we know in different international countries, areas, there has been, in the past or currently, the criticism of, putting, these displaced persons or refugees in a very, cramped and depleted or in difficult conditions. But government of Bangladesh, with our limited resources and also with the support of international community and UN agencies, we are extending them all out support. And you'll be happy to learn during this corona pandemic, actually, we have taken enough measures for protection of those people. And thanks God, actually, there has not been, outbreak of coronavirus over there, though they are very, crowded place. But enough measures have been put in place. And we are also rolling out vaccination for these refugees in coming days. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We feel encouraged by these efforts, and wishing all other helping hands will join Bangladesh in tackling this challenge. Thank you also for bringing in this new need for the refugees, which is the COVID-19 vaccination. We appreciate that, and we clap hands to your country and your people. Let me now give the floor to my friend, His Excellency, the Ambassador of India in Bahrain, His Excellency Piyush Srivastava.
Thank you, Dr. Najib. First of all, thanks to you. I just have a comment to make, no questions. Thanks to IPI for organizing this lecture series, and thank you, my friend, Excellency Dr. Nazrul, for such a wonderful presentation, bringing about all aspects in front of us. I must thank Dr. Nazrul for making us aware of various aspects, and first of all, congratulate your government under the able leadership of the Prime Minister to make such a development strides, including such a wonderful strides made in the socio-economic sectors. And at the same time, you are hosting such a large number of refugees. And India has the best of relations with the friendly country of Bangladesh. And we are proud to be a partner in your development path. And I think in this month, our Prime Minister Modi is scheduled to visit Bangladesh, which I think is his first visit in last 15 months abroad is to Bangladesh. That tells the depth of our relations. On Rohingya issue, as a neighbor of both Bangladesh and Myanmar, India is committed for an early, safe and sustainable repatriation of displaced persons to Rakhine states in Myanmar. And towards this end, we are working with both government and committed resources to both the governments. So I wish this crisis will soon resolve. And thank you once again, Ambassador, and all the speakers for such a wonderful presentations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend Piyush. Thank you, everybody. I don't see other questions. I will simply give the floor to His Excellency Nazrul Islam for some concluding remarks. and wishing all the best to Bangladesh in tackling all these challenges, and of course all other countries that are facing the ordeal of flux of refugees, and hoping that the international community will stand as one to tackle all these problems. Mr. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Najib, for giving me the floor again to make concluding remarks. Before that, I would like to express appreciation to my friend Ambassador Piyush for his comments, and certainly India, as I said, our next door neighbor, Myanmar and India, and we do actually count on India for their support for safe and dignified return of these displaced Rohingyas. Thank you again to all distinguished participants, excellencies, ambassadors, and my colleague from Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I can see Mona is here, and also two distinguished panelists, Mr. Margoob Salim Bhatt for his remarkable comments on culture of peace and human rights issues, and how it links to this crisis, Rohingya crisis, and certainly ensuring that that is important for anywhere on earth, not only this Rohingya crisis, but also in other places. And also my another distinguished colleague, Dr. Nazneen Ahmed from BIDS, for her valuable insights on economic aspects of Bangladesh. And despite this actually limited time frame, I tried to put in front of you the Bangladesh's aspirations. And we are at 50 now, and in the month of celebration of our Golden Jubilee. And Bangladesh has come a long way, but yet to go further. It is also long way to achieve sustainable development goals by 2030, and also Vision 2041 of our Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. And in that context, actually, we feel that this formidable challenge for Bangladesh is this Rohingya crisis. And we count on international community, UN agencies, United Security Council, and their distinguished members, and all international community, including these Gulf Cooperation Council members, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and also international organizations like Organization of Islamic Cooperation and its sister agency Iphrc. So all, if we join in hand for resolving this crisis, I am hopeful it is not so distant future we'll see this crisis will be resolved. And we are hoping that crisis will be resolved smoothly, and Bangladesh and other countries in the region and also elsewhere, they will grow with peace, stability, and development. Thank you all. And again, I would like to thank you, IPI, for hosting me for this webinar and organizing such a wonderful webinar. Thank you very much. And last but not the least, I would like to express my appreciation to my two colleagues, Mr. Rabiul and Tawhid from the embassy, and from IPI, your two colleagues, Dalia and Elijah, for their support for arranging this webinar. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, my friend Nazrul Islam. Your discussants, Nazneen and Margoob, were very, very helpful and interesting to listen to. Of course, you thanked my dear colleagues Dalia and Eliza for making this event a success, I would say, with all modesty. Thank you all, ambassadors, friends, diplomats. Thank you, Her Excellency Mona Radhi, representing the Foreign Ministry, and Bahrain. We thank Bahrain for hosting IPI to cover the Middle East and North Africa. Without Bahrain support, we couldn't have these issues raised. Again, we will meet you very soon on another issue, hopefully working towards peace and sustainable development in the line with the ambassadorial series. And we feel encouraged by your participation, and we do hope that any follow-up on these matters could be conveyed to us, and we would be very glad to make these events have sense and would be result-oriented towards trying to contribute to solving these matters. I would like to thank Dr. Abdurrahman Jawahiri for having joined us. I can see also my friend Muhammad Adnan from the Iraqi embassy and others. We will be getting back to you very soon. I wish you all the best. Again, to Bangladesh, happy 50 years, and you're still very, very young, my friend.